Hi guys.
Hi.
Can we stop the recording right now and we will start the recording when webinar begins?
Oh, yes.
So this is it. Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for your time. I would like to invite Mr. Suresh Rao, the COO of Imarticus Learning, to take the charge from here.
Thank you so much, Simon. I hope I'm audible and clear. Thank you so much for everyone to be part of this webinar. It's a good evening session, so I guess that's going to be even more interesting. So just a quick round of introduction about Imarticus, and I also will introduce Louis as well. So moving to the next slide, Imarticus, we specialize in various programs across banking, financial sector, technology, data science, analytics, sales skills. At the same time, we also specialize in behavioral and leadership skills programs. And it's our endeavor, and we are extremely honored to partner with Conversations, who are one of the top 20 global institutions in terms of leadership skills. And we believe that Fierce Conversations with their capabilities, and Louis, who's one of our senior most from a trainer expert point of view, would have a great value add for the Middle East region. I think in UAE and across Middle East region, we do see a lot of leadership space training programs, but very few actually concentrate on some of the conversational skill sets, which we thought could be quite interesting to the space that we are in. Importantly, UAE is almost a vibrant market where you have different cultures coming together and building that economy. I think it's even more paramount that from a leader perspective, how do you bring different diversities and cultures and having some apt conversations, which could be superbly important to build that business out. From an Imarticus perspective, I'm going to the next slide, Louis. Again, we are headquartered of India, and we've been into Middle East region for the last 4 years. We've delivered various programs across banking sectors, technology sectors, as well as we build content across various firms. We worked with First Abu Dhabi Bank, Mashreq Bank, and Qatar National Bank. And we've done a lot of work with the HCT as well from a university standpoint. So that's a little bit of Imarticus. In terms of our capabilities, as I said, it is across segments from domain, technical, functional, but at the same time, we build credible programs, which is job-oriented or job skill-oriented. Now, I think without further ado, I'd like to get Louis into the thick of things. And I guess Louis is the best person to introduce himself. But a quick note, Louis has more than 20 years experience in building great business outcomes, working in global organizations. And someone like Louis, who has lived and worked across Brazil, India, Mexico, US, and has also trained individuals across even the UAE, Saudi, New Zealand, Mexico. I think that would itself brings a lot of diversity in terms of his outlook to various professionals that he's been working with. With further ado, I'll bring upon Louis. Louis, thank you so much for being part of this session. Look forward to have some great conversations with you.
Thank you, Suresh. Thank you so much. Thank you for the kind introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Pleasure to be here. I'm Luis Gonzalez, Master Facilitator with Fierce Conversations. Fierce Conversations is one of the top 20 leadership training companies globally, and I'm really excited to bring you this thought-provoking, motivating webinar on the 7 conversation principles of highly effective leaders. I partner with organizations, clients across the globe, as Suresh already mentioned, to help them transform their organizational cultures by training their leaders on how to have what we call fierce conversations. I'll explain what that is in a little bit, but basically, fierce conversations are conversations that are candid, that are authentic and transparent. Conversations that spark curiosity in others, that invite innovation and solve the toughest business challenges. So briefly, here's our agenda for today. We'll talk about, first of all, some case studies. I'd like to share with you just 2 quick case studies that shows the successes of 2 organizations that I personally partnered with to help change the culture of communication in their organization, and we'll share the results of that. I'll share with you what is a fierce conversation. We'll discuss what do we mean by fierce conversations. What do we want to get out of a fierce conversation? In other words, the objectives, there are 4 of them. And then, of course, the 7 conversational principles of highly effective leaders. We'll cap it off with that. Those are the tools that you, everyone here, anyone can take immediately to use in any conversation and improve not only their results, but their relationships in the process. So I'll start with our first client that I want to share with you, Christus Healthcare. I've personally partnered with Christus Healthcare now for about the last 4 years. Christus Healthcare is a multinational healthcare organization. They're based in Texas in the United States, but they have global footprints. They have medical centers in the Southwest United States, Chile, Colombia, and Mexico. They leaned on feedback conversations in particular, in addition to some of the other models we offer, to drive results in their organization. So here's the story, and it's kind of cool, actually. Christus executives, they felt that the organization had fallen into a trap that many organizations face. You might relate with this. They had developed what we call a culture of nice. What's a culture of nice? A culture of nice is where people in an organization, in a team, a company, don't speak up. They don't call out mistakes. They don't call out the gaps that they see. They don't call out the roadblocks maybe that they see ahead. We know this is costly to an organization. Well, why do we do that as human beings? Well, many reasons. We don't want to offend someone. We don't want to hurt someone's feelings. We don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to be seen as someone who is not a team player, perhaps. And so we stay quiet. That's called the culture of nice. And when that happens, mistakes happen, rework, we lose clients. And even in some industries like Christus Healthcare, medical industry, healthcare industry, that could be someone's life if you don't speak up. So they wanted to change that culture of being nice. Associates of all levels had mistaken Christus's value of compassion. That's they're a Christian medical medical facility, if you will, healthcare organization. The associates mistook that value of compassion with avoiding difficult conversations and giving constructive feedback. Many leaders avoided having conversations that involved feedback about their team's work, whether it be positive feedback or constructive feedback. And so the frontline associates were confused as to how they were doing. They were not receiving any critique at all from any of the managers. So with a lack of feedback from leaders throughout the organization, some associates, obviously, they became disengaged from their work. That affected results. That affected the quality of the service they were delivering. Now, through some leaders' unwillingness to have conversations, Christus was concerned that some associates failed, their leaders failed to recognize and empower their associates. And to add to the cultural challenge that I'm talking about now, Christus had, in addition to this problem that I'm describing, they had consolidated its corporate offices from 3 geographically dispersed locations into 1 location, losing about 60% of its corporate staff in the process. So with that kind of a shift in an organization and the trust taking a hit, they knew they needed to rebuild the relationships within with their associates and develop a new way of communicating within the organization. So they sought a partner that could help them address these challenges, and they sought us. And that's when I began to work with them. So here's the solutions we came up with. The executive team enlisted me and my team of colleagues at Fierce to partner in a leadership training program that assisted in improving the company culture. Now, they turned to us at Fierce because the company's core philosophies and approach to conversation mirrors Christus's values. particularly the value of integrity and the importance of relationships. Christus wanted to reinvigorate, if you will, interactions between colleagues and managers and leaders through honest, meaningful conversation. So working with the talent management team at Christus, we at Fierce, I was part of that team, we developed a Leadership Foundations training program that concentrated on 4 specific skills: delegation, team conversations, confrontation, and feedback. Current leaders, including managers and executives, were the first to be trained. Christus leadership felt that if their managers, if their leaders could understand and adopt the Fierce practices effectively, they could then teach those who reported to them, give them this new skill set, and eventually that would lead to an overall shift in the culture. So they also, as part of this plan, made sure to have Fierce facilitators within their ranks. So there are now official Fierce facilitators within the Christus organization to sustain that cultural shift in the organization. What were the results? 50% reduction in turnover rate. They remain a close partner to us through this, obviously. So they got a 50% reduction in turnover rate, increase in promotions, retention, attrition kind of stalled a little bit, or at least slowed down, and a 73% improvement in targeted competencies. So it was a pleasure to work with them. We continue to partner with them. We're close partners, and this development is not scheduled to stop. This is now part of their internal culture, with the emphasis starting on the leaders of the organization, and now the focus having already shifted to younger associates with the intention of empowering younger associates and new managers. So by implementing Fierce's approach to communication, Christus Healthcare created an environment that appreciates, welcomes feedback, and encourages conversations that solve problems and foster creativity. That partnership with Fierce has made Christus Healthcare better positioned to not only function more effectively through its relationships with its employees and its culture, but to actually thrive as an organization. So that's one of our success stories. Real quick, I'd like to share another organization that I've worked with that has partnered with us in a similar way, but it's in a different vertical. This is Coast Capital Savings. Coast Capital Savings, obviously a financial and services organization. They're located in Canada, and they've been leaning on the feedback conversation model that we have at Fierce to drive results in their organizations, their organization. Now, pre-pandemic, this was back in the fall of 2019, they had their employees take a Gallup survey to find out how happy they were within the organization. And the main objective for the company was to find out if employee engagement had increased within the organization since the previous survey they had done in 2016, about 3 years before that. And I'm sorry to report, the results showed zero improvement. The major issues employees at director levels and below flagged were they were being asked to tick a box to show the organization was being collaborative, but senior leadership was not interested or not truly interested in listening. Development discussions were not productive. Top talent was becoming frustrated and leaving. And employees who were happy with that situation of no feedback, they were staying. So the good people were leaving. The ones that could use improvement were sticking around. So it was clear from the survey results, there's a problem with leadership. Simply put, people did not feel heard, and it was causing them to feel incredibly frustrated. So what was a disheartening conclusion from that survey turned into actually a really good thing in disguise that couldn't have been timed better for the organization. So around the same time these employees were taking that survey in 2019, other employees had attended a Fierce Conversations workshop in New York, and it was Fierce feedback. When they came back from that class, they immediately spread the word. They told all their other colleagues how awesome it was and that they had the answer to finally solve their engagement problems, right? They needed to reinforce the need for communicating authentically on all levels within the organization, in addition to offering feedback and asking for feedback and receiving it well. They basically needed to foster an open feedback culture. So after connecting with us, the organization began teaching Fierce feedback to senior leaders through certified facilitators. They trained their own facilitators in-house, and they have their, just like Christus, have their own facilitators in-house to help move that cultural change throughout the organization. Once those classes were complete, all the other employees were asked to participate in the Fierce Classroom, of which more than 90% in this organization have already currently done. So more than 90% of the employees in this organization have all been trained at some level in Fierce, and all have been trained in Fierce feedback model. So what came next was awesome. This client, Coast Capital Savings, said that they could see a shift in how employees viewed feedback. Previously, they had a negative idea of what feedback was. It was something that they wanted to avoid. They didn't want to hear it. That changed. Now they became incredibly enthusiastic in asking for and receiving feedback. They were enthusiastic in the Fierce classrooms. They've been solving problems with their coworkers on the spot, on the job, with the feedback model that they learned. Morale's vastly improved within the organization. Employees have been reporting back that they've been practicing the Fierce feedback model, as I already mentioned, in their daily interactions with everyone. We need feedback. Otherwise, we don't know if we're headed in the right direction. Other people need feedback as well. So this organization, Coast Capital Savings, took that to heart and made a drastic change in their organizational culture and their results. And here's just some of the results now. Yearly revenue increased over $300,000 US dollars. Employee engagements improved. Effective conversations increased among the leadership. Individual effectiveness scores increased company-wide, and coaching scores, their own internal coaching scores, improved by 23%. So these are just two stories that I personally, two organizations that I personally worked with, that I just wanted to highlight to show how they came in with some of these challenges, these communication challenges, if you will, that cost an organization through attrition, through mistakes, through rework, etc. And not to speak of trust as well, when trust is diminished, and then that exacerbates the issue. So what is a Fierce conversation? What is this that I'm sharing with you that helped this organization change their culture of communication and see these kinds of results? Let's talk about that. Let's dive into it for a second. So the best way to describe a Fierce conversation is this. A Fierce conversation is one in which we come out from behind ourselves, we come into the conversation, and we make it real. So what do we mean by make it real? Well, think about it. What is real? It's honest, it's authentic, it's transparent, candid, true, trustworthy, interested, curious, all of the above. Now, a lot of us are afraid of the real. We're afraid of the real conversations, but we have hesitations around that. The real conversation may mean I have to change. It may mean I have to do something. It may shine a spotlight on me or my involvement in the issue. But it's the unreal conversations that really ought to concern us. Why? Because the unreal conversations are incredibly expensive for any organization and us as individuals. Many leaders say they understand the importance of business, of being transparent in business conversations and leadership, but let's be honest, we human beings tend to avoid being transparent and candid in conversations. As I mentioned already, we feel nervous at the thought of being transparent, saying what really needs to be said. We fear the backlash. We fear the fallout. We may fear being wrong in front of others if we make it real and if we speak up. And what's worse than this, we say nothing at all. We may say nothing at all. What I mean by that is, okay, some of us are afraid to make it real, and so we say the unreal. An example of an unreal conversation is, and I've seen this in so many organizations, when a leader rolls out a new plan or a new idea and rolls it out to the team members or to the leadership team members, and everyone gives him or her what I call the corporate nod. Yes, yes, oh great, looks good. And they smile and they nod their heads, but inside their minds, they're thinking, oh, maybe this won't work. Maybe there'll be a gap. I wonder how the client will like this change, but they're not speaking up. That's an unreal conversation. And when we don't speak up, and when we don't say nothing at all, it's even worse. So let's talk about the cost. You've heard me mention already, hey, these are unreal conversations, fake conversations, surface, if you will, conversations are costly to a team or to an organization. Let's talk about that for a moment. What are the costs? I'm going to move forward. The costs of unreal conversations. I'd like to take a poll, if we could bring in the poll and see what your thoughts are. What are the costs of unreal conversations? Pankaj, do we have a poll?
Yes, I think Savan is putting up the poll.
Okay, everyone just wait for a moment. You're going to see a poll window come up. There we are. Thank you. So as you can see, what are the costs of unreal conversations? Hopefully you can see it. Subella, you can see it, the poll?
Yes, we can see the poll.
Okay, awesome.
We
Mistakes,
can see it,
rework, attrition, lost clients and customers are all of the above and more. What do you think? I see votes are coming in, and I'm seeing all of the above and more is taking the lead. Votes are still coming in. Let's give it about 5 or 10 more seconds and see. Costs of unreal conversations. At Fierce, we're about real conversations. What are the costs of unreal conversations? All right, I think the voting has stopped. Let's end the poll and let's share the results. Most of the attendees today said, and I would agree, all of the above and more. It's everything. You're absolutely right. It's all of the above and more. So what do we expect? Thank you for answering that so we can see there's a big cost. Now, what do we expect as a likely outcome of a fierce conversation? So let me back up. We've demonstrated what a fierce conversation is. It's one in which we come out from behind ourselves into the conversation and make it real, okay? So what do we expect as a likely outcome? Bear with me here while this poll will not move off my screen. There we go. All right, there we are. Now, thank you, everyone. So what's a likely outcome? What can we expect as an outcome of a fierce conversation? There are 4 objectives that we want to achieve when having a fierce conversation, okay? Number 1, we want to interrogate reality. Interrogate reality, not the person we're having the conversation with. Why do we want to interrogate reality? Because no plan we make in life survives its collision with reality. And we've seen, especially in the last 2 years, reality has a habit of changing. And that seriously complicates our fantasies about how things were supposed to go or how things should go. So number 1, we start with interrogating reality. Imagine 2 people in a conversation. I would ask the other person how they see things, what's their perspective, what's their opinion, etc. You interrogate their reality, they interrogate the other person's reality. How do you see it? What is your idea? How did you arrive at this conclusion? These questions are interrogating another person's reality, basically how they see it. We all have perspectives. We all have points of view. Sometimes they're different, right? And so when we start with interrogating our reality and the other person's reality in the conversation, we have a clear picture of where they're coming from. And when we do that, that will lead us to number 2, objective number 2, which is to provoke learning. So the second objective in a fierce conversation is that there should be learning for all parties. Provoking learning for me, provoking learning for the other person, whoever else is in the conversation. This happens when we interrogate reality, when we share what it looks like from our perspective and find out what it looks like from the other person's perspective. So through this interrogation of reality, we're able to provoke learning. We see things clearer. Our assumptions are cleared. We now see how the other person sees it or what their motives are, etc. When we interrogate reality and thus provoke learning, we're better equipped to, third objective, tackle the tough challenges. So in the conversation, we should not avoid any tough challenge that may come up in that conversation. We need to address any tough challenge that comes up in the conversation and not shy away from them. I've already shared with you the costs of unreal conversations and missing conversations. So in a conversation, sometimes a tough challenge will come up. A lot of times our instinct is to avoid it. We'll talk about it later, change the subject, move on to something else. But our third objective of a fierce conversation is to tackle that tough challenge. Now, in the process of interrogating reality, learning together, and tackling those tough challenges, our relationships with one another are enriched. That's our fourth objective. It's important not to forget the fourth objective of a fierce conversation, and that is enrich relationship with others around us. This objective often gets overlooked because it is possible to interrogate reality, to provoke learning, and to tackle tough challenge and still leave people feeling devastated or a negative feeling in some way after the conversation is over, right? So it's possible, as I said, to have all those three there, but leave other people devastated. Fierce conversations enrich relationships. Even when we disagree, even when we have a different perspective or a different opinion, we enrich the relationships through building trust in the conversation, through being authentic, being candid, being open, and being honest. So another poll. Which of these four objectives is most overlooked in your organization? Is it interrogate reality? Is it provoke learning? Is it tackling tough challenges? Or is it enriching relationships? I'd like to bring up a poll. Get your thoughts. When you look at these four objectives, which is the most overlooked in your organization? I see votes are coming in. All right. This is interesting. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to vote. They're coming in. And right now, tackling tough challenges is taking the lead, it looks like. Interesting. Let's give it about another 5 seconds, shall we? All right. And there we go. Let's share the results. And it looks like tackling tough challenges. Are people avoiding tackling those tough challenges? Think about it in your organization. What's the cause of that? So tackling tough challenges, followed by interrogating reality, provoking learning. But it looks like most of the people who took the poll seem to be okay with enriching relationships. I'm glad to hear that. My experience has been in other seminars, webinars like this. A lot of times the enriching of the relationships is the one that is most frequently overlooked. So it's interesting to see across the world and across organizations how this plays out. So we'll move right along there. Thank you, everyone, for taking that poll. Again, interesting to just kind of take a temperature check of where we are, all of us here in the room, right? Now, we've discussed what a fierce conversation is. Fierce conversation is one in which we come out from behind ourselves into the conversation, make it real. We've talked about the costs that are associated with unreal conversations. The four objectives I just shared with you are the what. What will I achieve by having a fierce conversation? It's now time to turn our attention to the how. How do we do it? What are the tools I can use in a conversation to make it fierce, to improve my results, to improve the relationships? I'd like to now introduce to you the 7 principles of a fierce conversation, the 7 principles of highly effective leaders. These are the things that you can do right now to start having more effective conversations, improving your results, personal and professional, and enriching relationships. These are the actions, if you will, of being fierce. As I share each one of these 7 principles with you, I'm going to ask you to select one that you want to focus on for the next 30 days. All of them are important, but one's probably going to have your name on it. One's maybe going to resonate with you or jump out at you. That'll be your action plan, if you will, right? So get ready to choose, if you will, which one that you would like to focus on in the next 30 days. So here let's have at it. Our first principle, master the courage to interrogate reality. Now, this principle comes to us from a senior lecturer at Harvard John F. Kennedy School of Government in the United States. His name is Professor Ronald Heifetz. And he suggests that mastering the courage to interrogate reality is the central function of any leader. We've talked about interrogating reality. It's the first of our 4 objectives. Now we're saying master the courage to do it. Why courage? As I mentioned earlier, if I interrogate reality, I might find out I was wrong. I might embarrass myself. I might shine a light on where I was a cause of the problem. So many reasons why we don't, for fearful reasons, a lot of times, why we don't interrogate reality. It takes courage. It takes courage to change. If we interrogate reality, we might have to do something. There might be action we need to take. It can be scary sometimes for some people to interrogate reality. But as I mentioned earlier, no plan we make will ever survive a collision with reality. We've seen that the last 2 years, right? Reality has a funny habit of changing from day to day. And what we decided was most important for us to focus on yesterday may no longer be true today. Not only that, your reality is different from my reality. Things change, circumstances change, people change, we change, and we forget to tell one another. We're changing all the time. So consider this. Mastering the courage to interrogate reality is the essential skill of any effective leader. Great leaders want to know the truth, and we can only get the truth if we interrogate someone's reality to help to have them share their truth with us. Weak leaders, ineffective leaders just want to prove they're right. They just want to be right. So what is it for you? Is your goal to be right, or is your goal to be an effective leader? To be an effective leader, master the courage to interrogate reality. The second principle, come out from behind yourself. Come into the conversation and make it real. What do we mean by come out from behind yourself? Oftentimes we wear a mask in conversations. We may wear a mask, and I mean a proverbial mask, not a real mask, but we may mask what we really think. We may mask what we really feel, and then we go with the flow. Think about it. How many of you here in our webinar today have ever been in a meeting where you decided, I'm not going to say anything, I'm just going to sit back and watch it go on? That's where we decide not to be fully ourselves. We decide to not be fully present. In fact, in one fierce workshop last year, I remember a lady telling me that she had always tried to project the image that she thought others desired of her. She had a different face for coworkers, a face for her boss, face for her clients, a face for her family. So you'll recall my earlier comment that while many of us feared the real conversation, I'll repeat what I said again, it's the unreal conversations that should frighten us the most. It's when we wear that mask and mask what we're truly feeling and what we truly want to say, that's an unreal conversation. So come out from behind yourself, come into the conversation, make it real. Number 3, in the conversation, be present, be here, prepared to be nowhere else. We may think we're the best at multitasking, but science has proved it's impossible for human beings to multitask. You can only focus on one thing at a time. So if you think you can multitask, if you think you're a good multitasker, and you think you can multitask in a conversation, good for you, okay? But what does that say to the person you're having the conversation with? What message does it send to your conversation partner when you're busy typing an email or finishing up work as you're talking with them, even though it might be possible? What's the message? What's the impact what's the message that it sends? It might send the message to that person that you're not valuable or important enough to stop working and focus on them. And one person came up to me after a workshop a couple of years ago after I was sharing this idea, and shared with me, they told me, hey, I'm valued in my organization for my ability to multitask, but with this idea, I just had an aha moment. It just occurred to me, people are not tasks. We have so many distractions these days, pings, messages, notifications, etc. The challenge we leaders have is to remain fiercely present in all of our conversations. That sends a message to our conversation partners that we value them, we value their time, we value what they have to say. So in our conversations with others, be present. Put your phone on do not disturb. Shut your laptop. Give eye contact. If it's virtual, turn on your camera. Give some eye contact. We human beings need that. Be present. And if you can't do that in the moment, then tell the person. Ask them to come back when you're done with your work. You could say something like, hey, I value your time. I want to give you my full attention, but I have to finish something right now. Can you come back in a few minutes? It's as simple as that. But that, even just saying that, does a lot to develop the trust and build the trust between people in a conversation. So again, be here, prepared to be nowhere else in our conversations. Now, principle 4 is tackle your toughest challenge today. This is very similar to the third objective that I shared with you of a fierce conversation, with the addition of today. So the third objective is tackle tough challenges. Now we're telling you on this on the fourth principle, do it today. If I could see all of you, I'd ask for a show of hands. How many of you procrastinate when it comes to difficult conversations? I'll be the first to raise my hand. It's tough and I see a lot of you raising your hands as well, for those of you with cameras on. Yes, it's tough for us. We procrastinate oftentimes when it comes to difficult conversations, uncomfortable messages. I know sometimes I wait for the right time of day, wait for the right stars to be in alignment, wait for the right mood, the right music to be playing, right? But research has shown and proven when we are faced with tough challenges, it takes up space in our brain, bandwidth in our brain. And we try to we're problem solving even when we're asleep. The research has shown this, right? So the part of the brain that handles problem solving is still active when we're asleep, when we have tough challenges that we still need to tackle. When we address that tough challenge, we free up that bandwidth in our brain to focus on more important things. So don't procrastinate addressing the tough challenges or the difficult messages that you may have to deliver. We all have had difficult messages to deliver, and we will continue to have difficult conversations, messages, if you will, to deliver. Fierce Conversations shows us how to do that while still even building the trust. So tackle your toughest challenge today. Don't avoid it. And in the conversation itself, obey your instincts. You may call it instinct. We're using the word instinct here, right? But some of you may say, oh, I call it my heart. I call it my gut. I call it that little voice. Whatever word you want to use, I think we're talking about the same thing here. There's something inside us sending us messages all day long. Listen to that little voice, your gut, your instinct. And in the conversation, if your instinct is telling you there's more to explore here, ask more questions in the conversation, I would do that. If my instinct is telling me there's more to uncover here, there are more details here, ask more questions, interrogate reality, I would do that. Conversely, it works the other way too. In the conversation, maybe you've asked a lot of questions, you've asked, and your instinct tells you, just sit back for a second, let them think, let them process, let them come up with a response, just be silent for a moment. I would follow that. Obey your instinct. There's something there. If you think about it, it's as simple as this. How many of you here ever in your life, how many times in your life, shall we say, in the past, have you said to yourself, I knew I should have done that? That's your instinct talking. Or the other side, I knew I shouldn't have done that. Pay attention to that little voice, your heart, your instinct, as we call it. There's something there, and we've seen that in our own lives. Principle number 6, take responsibility for your emotional wake. Well, what's a wake? A wake is a ripple effect. It's what a boat leaves behind in the water, a ripple effect. Each of us leaves a ripple effect. Each of us leaves a wake when the conversation is over. It's basically how we leave people feeling after the conversation. Our wake could be an afterglow. I have worked for leaders in some of the stellar organizations I've worked for in the past that are good at that. I still emulate them, and I strive and practice to be like them, to leave an afterglow after my conversations. I have been known to leave an aftertaste. I'll admit it. I'm working on it. I'm getting better at it, but I've been known to leave an aftertaste. I have worked for some leaders that have left an aftermath, right? By any comments they've made, snide comments, etc. So what is it for you? Also, think back to a comment a leader has made in the past that maybe upset you. And then think about the last conversation you had with a colleague or a direct report. What was your emotional wake? Do you know? Do you know the impact of your message? Sometimes, as I mentioned already, yeah, we've got difficult messages to deliver. Sometimes we have difficult conversations to engage in. But the key, and what we teach at Fierce, is to deliver the message without that heavy emotional load afterwards. The person or the leader who can most accurately describe reality without laying blame and without causing this kind of an emotional wake will emerge as the true leader, whether they have the title leader or not. So Maya Angelou said it well, and I cannot quote her exactly, but for those of you who are familiar with the American poet and author Maya Angelou, it has something to do with this. It's not exactly what you say, it's how people feel after you say it. That sums it up for me. So this is it. Take responsibility for your emotional wake in your conversations. And finally, number 7, let silence do the heavy lifting. In your conversations, allow for silence. Science has proven that for people, that's us, to make new connections in our brain in conversation, we need silence. Silence is a tool that will also help you, or that it's a tool that you can use to take the conversation to a deeper level. Silence is a tool you can use in the conversation to allow all parties in the conversation to process new information, have new realizations and insights, and even come up with a response. So in our conversations, allow for silence. Insight, which is what we want to get out of our conversations, right? Insight occurs in that space between words. When there's no when there's no space between words, when there's no silence for us to think through and process and come up with a response, we can only skim the surface of the conversation. Fierce conversations, as I said at the beginning at our opening, go deep. They are authentic, they are real, candid. That means we need to take the conversation to a deeper level. And when there is no silence to do that, the conversation can only stay on a surface level. Fierce conversations require we go deeper. So let silence do the heavy lifting in your conversations. Use silence as a tool. So these are our 7 principles. You see them here all now in a list. Which one has your name on it? Which one's jumping out at you? Maybe it resonated with you as I was sharing it. Which one will you focus on in the next 30 days to make these principles actionable for you? Which one do you want to act on in the next 30 days? Think of the one that will impact all your future conversations the most. And with that, let's see what you have to say. Let's bring up our last and final poll. I love and I can't wait to see which one are you going to focus on in the next 30 days. Let's take a quick poll. You should see the poll up now. I'll tell you which one mine is. Mine is be here, prepared to be nowhere else. I'm always multitasking. I'm working on it. I'm getting better at it, but that's the one I'm focusing on this month. Looks like some of you are with me on that. All right. Votes are coming in. All of them are important, but which one are you going to focus on? I see the votes are slowing down. Let's give it about 5 more seconds, shall we? All right, I'm going to end the poll and let's share the results. Wow, 24% tie. Be here, prepared to be nowhere else. A lot of you are with me on that one and tackling your toughest challenge today. So maybe a lot of you here, at least 24% of you, 24% of us tend to avoid those difficult conversations revolving around challenges. So great. Now put it to work, practice it, jot it down. Remember this. practice this one principle at least and see what kind of changes it can make in your relationships and the trust in your relationships. And not only that, in your results, your personal results and your professional results. I'll stop sharing the poll now. And I think now is the time to kind of wrap it up here, if you will. This is a final, I guess you could say, cornerstone belief that we have at Fierce. While no single conversation is guaranteed to change the trajectory of a career, a company, a relationship, or a life, any single conversation can. Any single conversation can move, change the trajectory of a career, company, relationship, or a life. Think of where you are now in your career. How did you get here in your career? There were probably all kinds of conversations that changed the trajectory of your career. Those of you that might be in really loving relationships, how did you get there? Series of conversations, etc. Business is one extended conversation, is it not? So we need to be attentive. We need to be intentional about our conversations and remember that any conversation can move things in a different direction. We just need to show up effectively in those conversations and be real and present. Excuse me. So thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure sharing this with you. I could go on and on. I could go on for hours to share and practice with you, but I think now let's open it up for questions. Happy to answer any questions that you have on anything we've discussed or anything that's on your mind around Fierce Conversations.
I would like to invite everyone to mention their questions. And we have the first question, Mr. Lewis. How to
we have questions coming in and so on?
Yes, it's from Mr. Rana. He says, how to deal with a rude junior?
Bear with me one sec. Someone, my audio just went out. Bear with me one sec.
No problem.
Okay, go ahead.
So we have a question from Mr. Rana Muhammad, and he asks, how to deal with a rude junior?
Can you repeat that? How to deal with what?
How to deal with a rude junior, a colleague, a junior colleague.
Yeah, if a junior is very rude, how do you deal with that, Louis?
How do you deal with a rude junior? Well, the big answer would be feedback. That's where our feedback model comes in. You offer that person feedback and you share with them some examples of where they were rude, but not only that, what's the effect of their being rude? How is it affecting the team members? How is it affecting the work? How is it affecting the results? And then you ask them to engage in the conversation with you and you give them feedback on it. That's one way. Now, let me tease it out a little bit. If there's behavior that seems to be turning into a pattern and you want to suggest that that person realize it and change, that would be feedback. That's just what I explained now. You offer that person feedback. Hey, you know, you're a little rude, you're a little snappy. Here's some examples. Here's the effect it's having on the other team members and our results. And then you engage them in the conversation. Help me understand why you're snappy. Why are you rude? What's going on? I probably wouldn't phrase it like that, but you would engage them to hear their side of the story, if you will. They've got a perspective. Maybe there's a reason why they're being rude that maybe, you know, you can address with them. On the other hand, if behavior, actions, or attitude need to change right away, so for example, if this rude associate, if that just has to stop now, like it was super, super rude or over the top and it just cannot happen again, that's where you confront. We have a confront model that addresses that, where you basically share with the person, here's what we witnessed, here's what's going on. It needs to stop. And then you engage them, of course. Fierce is always about engaging them in the conversation as well. Engage them to find out what's going on. Why are you so rude? Help me understand. How can I support? How can we change? So it involves, number one, a conversation. You cannot let that go unaddressed. You know you have to speak up about it. I would go into the conversation with curiosity, asking what's going on. Again, to repeat myself, I would share with them, here's some examples of where you've been rude. Yesterday, this happened. The day before that, that happened. You said this, you said that. It had the effect of, and then I would share what the impacts, what are the negative impacts to the business, to the team, to the project, to trust. What are the impacts? You share the impacts with that person and you engage them. Tell me what's going on. And then you come to resolution. Here's what we need to see. Here's what needs to change. Here's what needs to change by when, and how can I support you in that? You always want to be there to support them as well. So that's in a nutshell, very briefly, how I would do it. Go ahead, someone. Did you have a thought or a question on
Savan?
Yeah, there are some other questions as well. So we have Hank asking us if you could please share an experience of yours among cultures in the ability to make fierce conversations in a reality. So maybe in different cultures, how have you coped up with that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm glad you asked that. And as was mentioned in my introduction, I've worked many years in India, Mexico, Brazil, and I'm a United States American. So I get this cultural, there's a cultural difference, I guess, if you will, about speaking up in cultures such as in India, such as in the Middle East, such as in Latin America. Hierarchy is very much respected. Titles are very much respected. And it's even more scary for individuals in those cultures to speak up and be fierce, as we call it, and say, hey, boss, for example, I need to give you feedback. Or, hey, boss, that plan that you're about to roll out, I see gaps in it, right? So how do we do that in a different cultural context other than a very direct one like the US and some Northern European countries and Canada? The way I have seen it work and the way I teach it and the way I engage when I'm in those cultures myself, how I'm fierce in those cultures is I always show the intent, my good intent, first of all. So if, for example, in one of these other cultures, someone has a plan. Here, I'm just going to give you an example. Someone has a plan and they're sharing it with the team members. Okay, here's what we're going to do, X, Y, Z, right? Maybe this person's a leader and I'm part of the team. And I'm seeing a gap. My fear in my own mind might be, oh, don't go against it. He's the leader. It's his wonderful, awesome plan. Don't embarrass him. You want to help him save face. But I'm seeing a mistake. I'm seeing a gap. I'm seeing a challenge, perhaps in the future. So how will I address it? Good intention. And I would say it like this. Boss, there might be more to the story that I'm unaware of. I'm not sure how you came to the planning. There might be more details that I'm not aware of, but from what I do see and from what you've explained to us, I'm seeing a gap and I just want to help you and help us avoid that gap. I could be wrong, but I feel the need to speak up to save that, to make sure that doesn't happen. That approach, if you put that first, I'm looking out for the good of the organization or the good of the project or for you. Forgive me, there may be, I probably wouldn't say forgive me, so forget that, but I would say, hey, there might be more to the story that I'm aware of here, but from what I do know, I need to say this because if I don't, we may hit this gap. And generally speaking, in my experience, leaders, especially I'm living in Mexico now and working in Mexico now, leaders in Latin America, and I've seen the leaders in India respond well to that when you come with that approach. Different than in the United States, where here in the United States, you could just raise your hand and say, oh, Sawan, I don't know about that. Let's pick that apart for a moment. I think I see some gaps. In other cultures, you cannot be that direct, but you can still be fierce, raise the issue with good intention. My intention is to avoid a roadblock, although I could be wrong. There may be more details here that I'm aware of, but from what I see, for the good of the organization, I want to call this out. I hope that's helpful.
Absolutely. And Mr. Lewis, I think we have a lot of questions over here. We might not be able to answer them all. Just one quick question from Mr. Naveen. He asks, how to improve the trust level with the team members?
How to improve the trust level with team members? Is that it?
Yes.
How to improve trust? In my experience, we're talking about fierce. We're talking about conversations, being real, being truthful, and being authentic. To use that example that I gave a moment ago, let's say, Sawan, you're the leader. You have this plan and you think it's a wonderful plan and you're about to roll it out. I see gaps in your plan, but I don't say anything. You roll out that plan, mistakes are made, you're embarrassed, you get mud all over your face, only to find out later that Luis, me, knew that there was going to be a breakdown, there was going to be a gap, a mistake would be made, but I didn't say anything. That erodes trust. you'll come back to me later and say, Luis, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you say something? You let me roll out this big initiative only to fail. So to build trust, keep it real, make it real. Have a conversation with someone. I would say, hey, someone, I'd pull them aside just one-on-one and maybe not do it in front of everybody else. And I would be real and authentic with them and say, hey, I know you worked hard on this plan, this initiative. I'm seeing some gaps here from what I see. Might be more to the story that I'm not aware of, but from what I see gaps. Someone, can I help you? Can I support you? Let's talk about that. You will trust me more. You will probably tell me, oh my gosh, thank you, Luis, for helping me see what I did not see and then preventing me from rolling it out and getting embarrassed and making mistakes. That builds trust. So that goes back to what I was saying earlier about sometimes we have hard messages to deliver. Can we deliver difficult messages in such a way that it doesn't rock people's boats? That builds trust. Being real, being authentic. When people know that you don't, I want to use an American term, BS, that you don't, what's the term? You're real, you're authentic. What you say is what you really mean and what you really feel. People respect you for that and they trust you because they know you're only going to tell them the truth. And at the end of the day, that's what people want to hear. They want to know the truth. So that's how, in my opinion, and then in those 2 or 3 minutes, how you can build trust with other team members.
Absolutely. I think we'll take the last question for now. And that is, so how to deal with seniors who lack leadership skills. I think I have an answer for them. Enroll them for the leadership courses as well, but we will get
them enrolled, man.
How do people cope up with those seniors who are lacking leadership skills, let's say? I think.
You know what? There's so many leaders that I've experienced in the last few years, a lot of new leaders with little experience that don't have those basic skills. They need to be trained in those basic skills because they need to demonstrate it. They need to model it. They need to lead by example, and they need to hold others accountable on what this new behavior is going to be in terms of conversations and communication in the workplace. So that's the big picture, get them trained, give them the basic communication skills that they can use to be successful. Now, on a smaller level, you can have conversations with them, even leaders, as I said, with the good intention. If they don't have good leadership skills, someone should tell them, someone should give them feedback and point it out to them with an example. Hey, yesterday, this is what happened. And this is, the negative impact that it had. So it still involves a conversation. So on the very simple level, it involves conversations, fierce conversations, being real with someone and letting them know, giving them honest feedback, where they did well, where they can improve. We all need to improve in some area. We need feedback. We need other people to tell us. We can't see sometimes where we need to improve. These leaders, these managers need that as well. And then again, on the bigger level, get them trained in solid communication skills like fierce conversations, and then they can drive that type of a culture amongst the people that are on their teams and make that cultural shift in the organization.
Luis, we decide to just take another question and we will end the question answers round with that. So the last thing is someone wants to know, I think this is a good one, how to differentiate between aggressive and assertive.
That's a good one.
I've never been asked. That's a good one. I've not been assertive.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I'll answer it in just what's coming to my mind. If you're assertive, it builds trust. If you're aggressive, it can erode the trust. It can erode the relationship and the trust. If you're assertive, it implies that it implies that you're fierce, because if you're assertive, you speak up, you speak your mind, you say what needs to be said. You don't wear a mask. You come out from behind yourself. You keep it real. You're authentic. That is assertive. That's fierce. It builds trust. If you're aggressive, it pushes people away. Aggressive people often want to be right. That's not fierce. That's how I look at it immediately from just off the top of my head. Assertive is fierce. That's the difference. Aggressive erodes trust. Assertive builds trust.
Perfect. That was Mr. Luis Gonzáles. Shout out to him for giving us the time today. And I hope everyone had a good time. Everyone enjoyed. Everyone learned what they were here for. And I would like now Mr. Pankaj and Ms. Subela to take over and do the last rites, basically.
Thanks a lot, Savan. And thanks,
we
Luis.
would like to do last rites, Savan.
Yes. Thanks a lot to the entire audience and delegates for joining us. Thanks, Luis, for taking such a wonderful session. Thanks, Savan. Thanks, Colleen, and the entire Imarticus team for organizing it. We have Subela with us. Subela leads the business for the Middle East on behalf of Imarticus. And what we will do is Fierce offer these modules on Fierce conversation, on Fierce coaching, how to coach someone, how to have conversation in teams. We have teams modules. We have modules on accountability, confrontation, how to give feedback. So Subela will reach out to you, and in case you're interested, she will love to share more information about to all of you. Over to you, Subela, before we say goodbye to everyone.
Thanks, Pankaj. Thanks, Luis. Thanks, Savan. It's been a great event. And I think everybody's really enjoyed it. And yes, we're very excited that we've uncovered, I think Pankaj, Luis, Savan, we've uncovered a huge interest and requirement for conversation, fierce conversation. I'm definitely going to be in touch with all of you. Look forward to interact and yes, help out and work along with you and enjoy fierce conversation, because it's not just selling, it's not just business. I think for all of us, we really love this. We love the product, if I can call it a product, but I think we love what we are learning.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I think everyone would be going home today and telling everyone around, we are fierce now, right?
Yeah, I think if we can help the delegates who have joined here today with one or two things which they can take home, I think this event met its objective.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks
for joining. Thank you. Thanks, Luis.
Bye for now.
Great to connect. Bye, Pankaj. Bye, Savan.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.